Just to let you know, this session is being recorded. We're doing that so that we can share this session with other people. The link lines have been, or the Skype lines have been muted, so we can open those lines up when we're done our presentation. We really want to hear from you and get your questions and comments, and we'll leave some time for that as well. If you're phoning in today, if you could please mute your landlines by hitting *6 and then *1. You can unmute your lines when we're done the presentation, and again, so we can have some discussion. You'll also know that, please know that we'll be sharing the slide deck with you afterwards. If you've phoned in and you don't have the visual there, that's okay. We'll share this with you afterwards. Most of you should be seeing, or you will also be seeing, this discussion board here, and if you have any questions during the presentation, Laura Lee will be monitoring this area, and we'll try to address your questions as we are going through the presentation as well. Now I'm just going to call this up again. I'd like to welcome you again and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ron Beach. I'm the team lead with the addiction prevention team with Alberta Mental Health, and joining me today on the Cannabis Let's Talk Alberta committee is Laura Lee Moran in Lloydminster. Laura Lee and I are here together with you this afternoon to give you some more information about the project and the opportunity for some local community discussions in your community. The other members of our project team are Zan Harvey-Jansen with the Addiction and Mental Health team, and Michelle Sauvé, and Michelle is out of Medicine Hat. She's with the Tobacco Reduction Unit. Another key partner we have is the Lloydminster Community Coalition, and they've been working with us and partnering with us on this project to bring it to Alberta. Our agenda today is to talk about the project and give you an overview, more details about the training that we're offering, and speaking about the key messages that we'll introduce in the training. We'll also be sharing some of the resources that will be available to you as a facilitator in your community. We're going to introduce to you the proposal and the budget documents that are available if you're interested in hosting a community dialogue, and we're looking for those to be returned to us by January 31st, 2018. And we'll also talk about the support that this committee will offer to you in that process, answering any questions that you have, and our consultations are available to you so that we can work on this collaboratively together. I'm just going to start off by shedding a little bit more light on the Cannabis Let's Talk Alberta project. If you recall, the last session we talked about the general objectives that are for the CISUR. Somehow I've missed that in my notes about them, but the project is based out of Health Canada. It's funding that has come to us through the CISUR, the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research, and they have some broad objectives that they're looking for in terms of community engagement around dialogues, providing stakeholders with evidence-based informed resources to help them facilitate meaningful dialogues. Their objectives include strengthened community capacity to support dialogues related to cannabis and cannabis policy, and an increased understanding of the range of attitudes, beliefs, and values related to cannabis and cannabis policy within our community, and a broader citizen engagement. So in short and in plain language, the CISUR is interested in evaluating these tools that are available, that will be made available to support constructive conversations and dialogue around a complex social issue. Now, this issue happens to be cannabis at this time. So they're interested in those tools being utilized and dialogue as a tool being supported and measuring its effectiveness. Addiction and mental health, we have some goals as well. They are in keeping with all of the ones I just mentioned about building community and community capacity, but we're also interested in setting the stage to share reliable and cited health information as well. And we'll talk more about that as well, but there are some key messages that will be a part of our training and a part of the presentations and the dialogues. And so as you as a community stakeholder need to think about what your interests are as well. What it is that you'd like to accomplish. Like there's layers to this project. Again, CISUR is interested in the tools and dialogue. We're interested in that as well, and building community capacity, but we're also interested in providing good, cited, and reliable health messaging as well. The key messages that we would include in the training come to us through Alberta Health Services, Addiction and Mental Health, through public health. We would be looking at including information that is cited and sourced as reliable and placed in the right way within your dialogue, so that you are addressing some of the community's needs to provide them sources and links to where they can go and find good information. The dialogue of themselves is a whole, it's a process, and it's a discussion that we'll talk about more here this afternoon. But it's, just to understand what I'm saying, is that we want to, I think, set that up at the beginning. I would suggest that it's framed in the right way, so that the discussions don't erode into debates or challenging information or uncited information, because there's a lot of information out there. We can't go down any one path and do it justice. To speak, one could have an entire evening or an entire conversation just purely on medicinal cannabis, but that's just only one facet of a very complex issue. We are hoping that we can provide a framework for a dialogue and a conversation that honors people, perspectives and views that differ, and that's what we're looking for. And so it's about setting the stage and setting the milieu so that there's a dialogue. And Laura Lee, is there something that you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think that's really important for communities to know that they'll have the support, because it's such a complex issue, talking about cannabis and understanding medicinal marijuana compared to edibles, compared to, the impact on youth versus adults and mental health. And so I think it's really essential that we provide the facilitators with that knowledge and information, as well as our addiction and mental health staff that will be supporting projects across the province. The other thing would be that we talked a little bit, I've been chatting with communities as well as Ron has, and really thinking about how do we help you set the stage for that meaningful conversation, and really to set the stage with what are the facts, what are those health facts around cannabis. So that will definitely be part of the training process, and one of the resources that we'll provide to you. Just recognize that it's ever changing right now as we review research and gather information from around the world really, and so we want to make sure at the point of giving you the facilitator training and you hosting your events that you have the most up-to-date information available.
Thank you. And I should just add at this point, when you're looking at your proposals, that we want to entertain proposals from all community stakeholders. And so if it is that AHS, Addiction and Mental Health, is a part of your team, your collaborative team, that would be great. We'd like to link them in as well. If it is that they're not, that doesn't preclude you from applying for this opportunity and to be supported in your application. So that if it is that at some point there are key messages that are shared, it might be a strategic thing to have that addiction and mental health person sharing those pieces of information. But again, we intend to provide these key messages and make this support available to all of the stakeholders and facilitators that we're working with collaboratively. The facilitator training that we're going to offer with successful proposals that are submitted, we'll talk about that more in a moment, we're looking at providing the facilitators training on site in as many communities as we possibly can. We're likely going to co-locate them, so we're talking about dates in the new year. If proposals are in to us by the end of January, we're looking at setting dates in February and in March in Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, South Zone, North Zone as well as it will also look at other opportunities as they present themselves. If a community has enough interested parties in one particular area, then we want to try to make this training available and accessible. So we're looking at those dates with the idea that we will provide the training, give you the resources and the tools and the support so that you're able, and the budget, so that you're able to facilitate these conversations and these dialogues in your community. Laura Lee, would you like to add to that?
I think, we've selected the dates, and we just need to confirm them, on Monday or Tuesday next week, and then we'll have them out to you so you can get them in your calendar. And thinking about, regional, we may not have the location exactly within your region of where that will be, but for example, in Central Zone, we'll be having one in Red Deer or in that area, as well as one on the east part of the zone. And so we want to give you the dates so that you can book that into your schedule and know those. So you should have those before the Christmas holidays hit. So I think I'll just continue on with talking about what the training will be like. And so as discussed at the information sessions, Cannabis Let's Talk will really use that approach of nurturing community conversations as a way to harness and build on the wisdom and capacity that exists within groups and within the community already. So during the facilitator training, we will work with the principles of dialogue to build facilitator skills so they can confidently engage and support dialogue. We will model and practice the styles or the different ways of nurturing that conversation. Our goal is really to create the experience so you will know what it feels like or looks like to draw from conversations and create an opportunity for all voices to be heard. And some of those important pieces will be developed to ensure that you have the information to share the facts about cannabis, practice some myth busting while drawing conversation back to the facts. So you may have, we had a young student the other day say they heard that medicinal marijuana cured cancer. And so you may have some of those kinds of statements at your event. We want to make sure that you have just the facts to draw the conversation back into what the focus is, and that's building empathy and understanding around the issue. And so we'll also explore ways of knowing and managing those alternative facts or those fake news things that facilitators and project team members will be easily able to address them in the conversation. The training will also provide you with an experience that will help you build your own style of facilitating and engaging in conversation. And so it will provide you with the learning on the principles of dialogue and setting the stage for that meaningful engagement. So I just wanted to share with you what those principles of dialogue are, because this may be new language to you, but I don't think what we're talking about will be new to you at all. So the principles of dialogue that we'll use are practice empathy. So creating a space that encourages all to feel like what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. We'll have a lot of diverse opinions or experiences within our conversations, and we want to make sure that we are practicing empathy. And we also want to encourage stories or sharing of concerns and feelings, and so that practice of empathy is really critical. We want to celebrate diversity and include a diverse range of perspectives through invitation or design and activities or questions to ensure that all voices are heard and encourage everyone to participate. So if we all think the same thing and get into a room to have this conversation, there's probably not any point to it. So we want to really make sure that we give an opportunity to really look at the community and bring in that diverse range of perspectives so that we can really build the empathy and understand different people's perspectives and move forward as a community to make ourselves stronger. We'll promote curiosity and learning. And so posing thoughtful questions that encourage exploration and self-reflection, and practice reflective listening to build understanding and learning by all. And so those are some of the things that you'll learn within the facilitator training. And the questions will actually have a menu of questions for you to use to facilitate your conversations. We'll expose assumptions and suspend judgment. So we really want to explore how personal views are influenced by assumptions based in our past, and facilitators will help participants engage in activities putting oneself in the other's shoes. And then put power in its place. So really focusing on creating a safe space where all opinions are welcomed. So if you're working with a workplace, you want to make sure that the management isn't hindering the ability for the workers to, or the other workers to actually engage and share their views. So we want to encourage people to join the conversation as fellow citizens, fellow workers, and not representatives of a position. And you may at some of your conversations have some town council, city councilors, a mayor that are participating, and we want to make sure that they're just there as a resident and not in the position that they hold in the community. So the facilitator training is under development, and we're working hard to ensure that it is time well spent by the facilitators that attend and participate. So certainly if you have some suggestions now on what you want the training to cover, we're open to your suggestions. So if you've had some training opportunities in the past and you think this was really fantastic and it relates to the training that we're providing, please share that with us. This is also an opportunity for us to think outside the box and to create a session that's really meaningful and useful for the project, but also for future projects as we work with communities to build understanding and empathy. So it could be many different topics, and this is really about creating a conversation within communities that we can apply to any issue that has diverse perspectives or is complex. So it could be something like other substances or mental health. It could be gambling or strippers. Whatever the issue is that is impacting your community, it's building the skills and the understanding within the community on how you can have conversations and move through a difficult issue together. Ron, if you can just move to the next slide, please. Excuse me. So, and on this, if you can pull up the proposal, we'll share it with everyone online so they can take a look at it. So if you just watch the pathway that Ron's going to, we've housed this information on our website, which is our drug coalition, ylmyhome.com. And you saw that little Cannabis Let's Talk logo in the top right corner. And when you click on it, this is what appears. And so that when we talk about the repository, this is where we're referring to. And so you can see in there that we have a couple of resources and then the Cannabis Let's Talk documents. So I'll quickly just talk about those resources. The Guide to Nurturing Community Conversation. This is what it looks like. And so this guide is really to help you understand the Health Canada and the sister outcomes on how they want to create dialogue within communities, and that nurturing and understanding, building empathy across communities and why it's important. So we really want you to read this document prior to planning your event so that you just have a good understanding of what they're trying to accomplish and how you can use it maybe in other ways across your community. So we're only sharing with you a couple of documents, and we'll share more as they become available, but we don't want to make it so cumbersome that there's so much reading to do you can't get through it. The other one is just Let's Talk Community Dialogue, and it's about drugs. So having conversations about drugs. And so there's some really key information in here as well that will just help you understand what we're trying to accomplish and how those dialogues might be effective in our communities. Thanks, Ron. So now we want to just share with you the proposal documents. And so they're on that repository as well. And we wanted to keep this really simple for you as a community. And so we're asking you for some basic details. So just your location, who's your banker. So if it was our drug strategy that's hosting this, then it would be YLL My Home, who's our banker. The primary contact and their contact information. If you have an AHS support person, just share their name with us. If you don't, that's okay, as Ron said before. And then who you've identified from your community to be the facilitators that will come and take the training. And if you don't have all of this information right for January 31st, like the facilitators, just share it with us as soon as you have it after that. The target group. So who are you thinking to host conversations with? Is it a workplace, or is it council and administration within your municipality, a service club like Rotary or networks or community coalitions. There could be associations like a construction association, Chamber of Commerce, or young adults. So in Lloydminster, we're hoping to host one with Lakeland College because their perspective and their ideas are really important, and we want to have that opportunity to engage with them. And we also have a young professionals group, and I don't know that we'll host a conversation with them, but that would be an opportunity to focus on young adults. And then identify and describe how you plan to engage. So what kind of conversation will you have? So you can have an out-of-the-box great idea. It doesn't have to be something that we've noted here below, and we're really interested to hear the great ideas that come out of community on how they might host this conversation. And so it could be something formal like a dinner and dialogue. And if any of you on the call are familiar with the dinner and dialogues that we did around alcohol, then you'll understand what that looked like. A World Cafe. Maybe you'll have a paint night like the Art of Conversation, and that was done really successfully through the Pre-Think Your Drink projects that happened in some of our university campuses. And so we'll share little bits and pieces of how that might work and give you that experience of the facilitator training, but you can start to think about what that might look like. And we're also going to share some one-pagers on each of those activities that we've noted, just to give you an idea of what they are like to coordinate. You could have something active, so maybe you do some games or movement. And just down on the bottom then, what's the description of your event and plan, and just give us a little bit of an idea of what that's like, and then the timeline, so some of the details around when you're planning and what your costs will be. We also have a budget document. I'm sorry, I seem to have a frog in my throat. I've been talking all day long. If you can imagine, if any of you know me, then you'll know that that probably happens every day. And so the budget document also again on this repository, and there it is, trying again to keep it really simple. What are the costs for travel for your facilitators, some marketing costs, hosting. So are you serving refreshments? Do you need to rent a facility? Are you serving food? What does that look like? Are you doing a paint night where you need some supplies? So all of the details of your expenses can be placed in there. And we'll certainly work with you even after the January 31st deadline to tweak that budget for your event. Thanks, Ron. And then finally, if you can pull up that last document on that website that we have loaded right now, it's just the dinner and, it's not the dinner and dialogue, it's the World Cafe. So when I said that we were going to share with you a document on each of those style of events, this is the one that we have prepared on what is a World Cafe conversation. And it just gives you some information to understand what that style of event would look like. Thanks, Ron. And then finally, our small but mighty team will be available to provide consultation and support along the way. So you can connect with us via telephone, via email. You can always use the Cannabis Let's Talk email address as well, and we'll get back to you. So this is really a new style of project for us, and it's important that we work together across the miles to share information and to learn from each other. So we really hope to have good dialogue and conversation with you as we work through the planning for these conversations in community, and through the process of hosting these types of events across the province on a very complex and challenging issue, which is cannabis. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, not at this time. Thanks,
okay,
Laurie.
Great. So as you can imagine, there's so much information out there around cannabis, and some of it is industry, their marketing. I don't know if any of you have seen like Natural Health, and it looks like an Alberta Health Services logo, and the colors are the same, and it's really can be confusing for us, but imagine how confusing it can be for community people who aren't working in prevention and promotion or in health, and understand the differences between all of the campaigns or the initiatives that are going on around cannabis right now. So we wanted to provide you with some branding. So you don't have to go to the work and expense of branding your project. They'll all look the same across the province in terms of the logo and the basic design. You can edit all of the files. So this is one I just did some mock-ups, pretending that we're hosting one in Lloydminster. These are social media files. There's 16 different ones, and you can use them to share information about your event, to engage in conversation or provide information to individuals or to the community via social media. And so we wanted to make these files available to you so that it's branded to the project, and also that you have the ability to edit them to suit the style of event that you're having and to provide the information that you want to provide to your community. And then in addition to that, so thanks for rolling through those, Ron. Those won't be on the repository because we don't want anyone accessing them that doesn't have a project that's been approved. So we'll be sending those out to you separately once we go through the project proposals and get that ready for you. We also have a poster, and this poster has all 4 of those different icons on them. And we put our drug strategy logo on there, Why Allow My Home. You'll be able to do the same thing if you have a logo, or if you're working within a coalition, or if there's an organization that's hosting a conversation, you can add those logos on. And then these boxes can be moved around and changed, but all of them have just editable text boxes within them, so you can change up the information to suit your design. Or maybe the right-hand side, you just want one big long box to really focus on your event and the location, and so you can change that up a little bit. But we want to make sure that the logo and the standard branding of the project are the same for everybody. So in addition to providing you with those files, we'll also provide you with a bit of a strategy on how to use them with the project teams. And so we created that mock event to just show you what that could look like. But we'll also have a how to use guide for all of the branded templates. And then in addition to all of those things, we'll also provide you with a copy of the logo that you can insert onto other documents that you might prepare. And this PowerPoint presentation that you've been seeing today will provide you with a blank template of that, so that if you want to use a PowerPoint to guide the conversation at your event, that you have the ability to brand it to your event and use the same style of files. Great. I think next slide. And it looks like I'm still on, so you're still going to be listening to me. So before we move to those next steps, though, we wanted to share with you this slide from the information sessions, really as a way to encourage you to think outside the box and to brainstorm why cannabis. Let's talk what it will look like in your community. And so you know your communities best, and you've most likely already encountered conversations about cannabis legalization in the coffee shop and at network meetings with municipal staff and councils, at your workplace, and perhaps even at your dinner table. And I know last week I was at a mental health capacity building advisory meeting, and it came up there. And so it seems that everywhere that I go, that there's bits and pieces of conversation happening, and it's kind of exciting that we're able to offer this opportunity to communities. And so we recognize also that many community members are curious, and some of them may be really concerned or others may think it's about time that we had this, and others just want to know what the details of cannabis legislation will look like in Canada and in their community. And so that's a big work in progress right now. So thinking about your community, who might you engage? So we talked about the workplace, our council and administration, service clubs like Rotary, network members, young adults, professionals, college students. So it's really about who do you have the connection to in your community where you could really draw in some different perspectives. Do you want to, host 2 or 3 events in your community? You're certainly welcome to do that. And so if you could, think of a couple of different conversations that you may want to do. Some of the considerations that we've had here in Lloydminster is to host with Lakeland College, and we hope that we'll be able to create that opportunity with them to host one that's maybe more general along the community, so more of an open invitation to everyone. And we might identify some specific people and send them invitations, and then allow for just regular community members to register to attend the event as well. And we also, our youth council is looking at hosting an event here. So there's lots of opportunities. So think about who you have in your community that would be able to join in and host this, and also how you can connect with other people who you might not certainly be connected with now. And then how to engage. So once you identify that target group, think outside that box again and to establish what type of engagement would be meaningful to them. And we're really working on those simple one-pagers on the different styles of events, so I hope to have those for you by the end of this year. The event does not need to fit inside a box. It can overflow, or it can just be completely different than the shape of a box. So do whatever works for you. One of the things our kids were talking about was doing a Kahoot in classrooms where they could ask questions and kids use their cell phones to respond. And you can see the responses right away up on the board, but it's an anonymous way to really get engagement from youth. And we would ask them really specific questions and then take that, what we hear from them, and then have a conversation with a group of youth as well to kind of go through that. Let me just think. And then when to engage. So start now and engage in a committee to host and identify who those facilitators might be, what kind of conversation you will have, and who those target participants might be. Conversations are going to be hosted in the spring of 2018, so April to June. And so start working through that proposal and budget documents now and be certain to connect with us along the way if you have any questions. And so again, those proposals will be due to us by January 31st. And Ron, you're on.
Thank you very much. So the next steps.
Ron, we just can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No.
Can't hear me?
I just barely. It's really quite hard to hear you. How's everyone else? Oh, there. That's perfect.
There we go. I moved my microphone again. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. Good work. We were hoping we could get through this without our teammate Michelle to guide us. So good job. Thank you.
So thank you, Lorley. Thank you very much. So as we talked about, the next steps are to think about the who, the how, and the when for yourself. With your team, think about putting that proposal together. The documents are all there on the repository that we'll provide to you again in an email in summary, and you can go there and download the proposal form and the budget form. And to be in touch with us, questions and discussions are quite welcome. We want to work with you collaboratively to see that your proposals are developed the way you'd like to see them developed for your community. And then once we have those proposals in and we review them, we'll be making some steps to shore up and affirm your budgets and see that those are in place for you, so that you have the funds to do the next steps and attend the travel. Your travel will be supported, for instance, to the training and whatnot. So. That's all the time that we had for our basic presentation. I see it's 3:30, and so we have some time now to open up the phone lines and open up the text box, as it were. I think it's called the conversation box. We'd really like to hear your comments. Are there areas that you'd like some more information on? Any questions that you might have? This would be the time to put those forward.
So I'm just going to unmute the lines.
Thank you,
so that everyone can speak. And we do have a question in the text box from Lorna. And so Lorna's asking, can the funds support a series of conversations, or are you looking for a single event? Great question, Lorna. Ron, do you want to answer that? Or?
Well, the short answer is yes. The funds can support a series. Like you look at your plan and how that would look, and we're only limited by our own imagination here and your creativity. So. Think about that and what that would look like, and we'd be more than interested in having a discussion and looking at that type of a proposal.
Well, I think it's really exciting if you're able to host, 2 or 3 events. It's great if you can host one. We're so happy about that. But if you can host 2 or 3 and really engage different target populations across your community, it will give you a really great understanding of what people's perspectives are.
Yeah, we're not limited to say, oh, you know, we can only have 2 in this, you know, community X. If there's an interest from different diverse groups and populations, then we're going to look at all of them.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, Lorna?
You bet it does. Thanks, Laura Lee.
You're welcome.
Another question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Laura Lee.
No. I just was going to just remind people they can either type their question in or they can ask it on the telephone.
And sometimes people are thinking, and we've had questions come afterwards. You're certainly welcome to email us afterwards. Another question that came up at a past session, I'll just throw this out there, was the interest in what if it was that media or lobbyists wanted to attend. And I think that we would address that in our facilitator training, and our perspective on that is as Laura Lee talked about earlier, is to putting power in its place. The media has a role in terms of trying to maybe to see if there's a story there and sensationalism or what have you. Lobbyists have a role. Putting power in its place is that we're asking people to attend as citizens, and they're welcome to attend as citizens. And that's something that as a facilitator and a host, you would look at setting the stage so that everyone has an equal voice. And so this isn't about presenting a pro or a con. It's about presenting an opportunity for people to be heard and to hear others.
And we have had the question as well of, you know, how do we use this information once we have the conversation, what happens next? And so we will engage back with the conversation with you to kind of debrief the event and understand what your learnings were, what worked really well, what didn't work, because as we've mentioned before, this is an opportunity for us to engage in building those nurturing conversations in community, and we might use them down the road, I hope we do, for other topics and to go back and engage again with community. The other thing that may be important to a community is to really engage with the community, understand what are their concerns, what do they want cannabis to look like in their community in terms of where you can use it, or if you how many retail outlets you have to sell it. And so an opportunity for us to go back to our decision makers at town council, at city council, and say, this is what the community had to say around cannabis, and share with them those important pieces that come out of the conversations to inform them on their decisions that they make around the number of outlets or what their bylaw will look like in terms of cannabis use and sales in their community.
I had a question.
Great. Who's speaking?
I'm Ava.
Oh, Ava. Great.
Well, I was wondering, do you have a standardized letter of some sort that we would be using to send out to the different invitees? And I'm thinking that's the only way I'm thinking people would be able to RSVP or something.
Mm-hmm. So
I know that I saw the poster thing that you gave, but I just wondered if there was a letter of some sort that we would send out and then hope to get some kind of RSVP.
So I think that will look different every community and every event that they host, what style of invitation you want. And one of the things that you could explore would be to have tickets reserved on Pictactic. And so it's a free service if you're not charging for an event. And so you can just set it up and put the logo in there so people recognize it as your event with a little summary of what the event is and the location, and people can buy their free tickets online, and then it helps you also to reconnect with them because they provide their contact information, and it's an easy way to manage registration. We have also on our website, While on My Home, we've done some other pieces of registration, things for like Simple Connections, Stronger Families, for training where people just go online and they register for a spot. You can send a letter, so you'll have access to all of those branded templates. So the logo you can use, and you can create your own letter or invitation to send out to individuals as well.
So what website is that, please?
Pictactic, so Pictactic, I think. Okay, so we have a couple questions. Does that answer your question, Ava?
Thank you. So just Google Pick Tactic.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
And,
All right.
okay, so let's just check. Is there a training developed for Indigenous population in conjunction with the Wisdom Council? Great question, Robin. Ron, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to take a stab?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so within this project, they actually are engaging with the Indigenous populations in a different way. And so all of the First Nations are having a different level of engagement than this. They're certainly welcome to use this within any First Nation community or Indigenous community, and within communities where there's an opportunity, like a Native Friendship Center, or an opportunity to host a conversation, we would encourage that. There is no special training developed for that work, though, and we don't have the capacity to work with the Wisdom Council right now to develop that. If somebody wants to connect with them and create that piece of work, that would be fantastic. If we wanted, culturally, make it more culturally appealing and acceptable to them, then that would be fantastic. But within the scope of this project, with our committee of 4, we won't be going in that direction. Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you answered it well.
Okay.
As you said, there's the Thunderbird group there is looking at national sort of efforts with the Indigenous populations. Ours is not exclusive, and if there was Indigenous groups and populations that wanted to be a part of the training, the facilitator training further that Lorna asked about will include the tools that we've talked about to support and facilitate dialogue, tools to engage both their communities, but also the setting the stage for an effective discussion. And we'll do some training to try to support those facilitators to be able to facilitate a successful event. And we'll also be providing some of the pieces around evaluation that we'll be looking at, which hasn't come up with this discussion today, but our evaluations will not be onerous. We're looking at most significant change, which is like qualitative information from you, from the different stakeholders. Did you feel like it made a positive impact, this type of thing? It will not be onerous, the evaluations. Would you add some more about the facilitator training? I think you spoke to that earlier already.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of spell it out, we'll do a piece around setting the stage for the conversation. We'll give some experiences around what different styles of conversation might look like, if it's more formal or less formal. We'll do the piece around the AHS key messages around cannabis to make sure that facilitators have a good understanding of what those key messages are and how they can do some myth busting. And then we'll work on those principles of dialogue that I mentioned before. So we'll even do some, I'm not going to call it role playing because I don't want to scare anybody away. We'll do some experiential practice and learning around
modeling. There you go.
Modeling, perfect, around reflective listening and drawing that conversation back into what we're really trying to accomplish, which is building some bridges across some diverse opinions in community.
Thanks, Laura Lee and Ron.
You're welcome.
I was just going to ask a bit more, Laura Lee. So when we're doing these conversations, is it expected to have somebody in the room from your team that has more in-depth experience, or are you just relying on those messagings that you're providing in the facilitation training?
Yes. So conversations could be invite an addiction and mental health staff person to come in to the room and be part of that. Well, we would really encourage that, but it's not necessary that they have that. It's not a requirement. And so from our team, I'm not sure, Lauren, if you mean my health promotion team or if you mean our little four-person team of Cannabis Let's Talk.
I think I'm just thinking if I was in a room facilitating, that I may not have the depth of knowledge that I would like to have. And so I would like that kind of support, regardless of where I was in the zone, I think.
Yeah, and we would really encourage all of the conversations to have that person there that really does have the deeper understanding of those key messages, so that if there's some myth busting that needs to happen, that they can help facilitate that alongside the conversation facilitators. And so we'll explore that during the training, just to ensure that facilitators are confident in even drawing other people who are in attendance to say, this is what I understand. What do you have something to add to that? And build their confidence that way, that there's people there. I'm hoping communities will build the project so that there's people in the room that can be really supportive of the facilitators.
Right, and I know to Laura, our team was speaking earlier today, and we were talking about we don't want to be the people necessarily facilitating. We want it to be locally driven, and we're there to support the facilitation component of it.
Yeah.
So we want to be trained. A number of our team members want to be trained so that we can support our local partners who would then lead those conversations. That's just how we were trying to approach it.
Yeah, and that's perfect. We were hoping that would happen as well. So we may have some people come for facilitator training that aren't the conversation facilitators, but they're those people that are there to support communities to successfully host those conversations. So I'm not intending to be a facilitator of our conversations. I would like other people to do that. I think people hear me talk enough in my communities already that it would be really much more meaningful and powerful to have other people facilitate that conversation. And I can be there to support them. If they give me a sign that they want me to kind of add a piece to it, I'm happy to do that. But I agree with you. It would be great to have other community partners to facilitate the conversations. So I hope that answers your question. Happy to have more conversation with you, Lorna, if you have some more questions around that. And perhaps even you and Jeanette and I can connect, because I've submitted a request to Jeanette for some pilot training, and you may want to be part of that as well.
Awesome. And yeah, you're answering my questions really well. So now, only because I was in another conversation with some school districts this morning, we are wondering how messaging is going forward, and we still don't know the parameters of what legalization is.
Well, we have some pretty good ideas, but it's open to amendments, of course. But certainly 18 and up is what the legal age will be, and I don't anticipate any changes to that in Alberta. And so school-aged children would still not legally use or possess cannabis products.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then thinking about policies around, school policies and in combining that with some tobacco policies. So an opportunity for us to not lose ground on our tobacco control work that we've done over the last, 20, 25 years, but really to strengthen it. And cannabis is hopefully giving us an opportunity to do that around vaping, around where tobacco can be used, and also around where cannabis can be used.
And it sure is a good opportunity to look at what smoking policies are in place and when's the last time they were updated and can we modify now. Absolutely, those conversations have started.
Right. So in Alberta in what year was that, 2013? 2012, we had the ban on flavored tobacco along with the Alberta Tobacco Reduction Strategy introduced. And so lots of work happening now at different tables across the province to really say, what have we not proclaimed that's already passed in legislation, and what still needs some regulations around it, and let's get this moving, sales to minors and some different pieces. And so cannabis is giving us an opportunity to do that as well. So we do have another comment from Robin McBride. So local Indigenous health coordinators, and I'm just not certain of your question, Robin. So I'm thinking that
was actually attached to the first question. I hit the wrong button.
You hit enter.
So I hit enter. So it was like that's why. So just in development about kind of, because we have to approach it differently with them, and any initiatives that go into the Indigenous communities and into the nations have to go through the Wisdom Council.
Okay, that's great to know. And so is that the Provincial Advisory Council, the Wisdom Council? Yes.
It's an Alberta Health Services Wisdom Council, yes, and it's the provincial one, and apparently I was just in a webinar yesterday and learned about them, and I asked the question about if that was just a provincial initiative or if that was localized to different nations that were happening in the province. And the word I got back was that should be done with any initiative that's being taken into any nation.
Okay.
So just if we're bringing something in, it needs to just be vetted through the Wisdom Council.
Okay, so we haven't marketed this opportunity to the Indigenous health coordinators, but hopefully some of them have heard about it, and I guess they would take that then to the Wisdom Council to vet it through them. But that's great information to have. Thank you for that. So we're just at 3:49. I'm just wondering if there's any last questions or comments out there.
I have another question.
Ava, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to know how appropriate this conversation on cannabis is for the youth population.
Mm-hmm. The youth have a lot to say about cannabis. And so I think you want to make sure that your facilitators have a really good understanding of the AHS key messages around cannabis, the impacts on brain development. I would even want to say to kids, how is early use of a substance going to make your life better, right? And so thinking about, kids have a lot to say, so it'd be great to get that perspective from them. I think it just needs to be really well done. And our youth council in Lloydminster really badly wants to host one of these conversations. And so we've been chatting with them a little bit around if they're facilitating, and then we have, 3 or 4 other trained facilitators around the table with them to really support them, what that would look like. So we're thinking that we might do another style of engagement where kids have an opportunity to give their thoughts on some facilitated questions, like anonymously, or write them on a board, or whatever that would look like. And then we'll gather all that information together and sit down with a smaller group of 30 or 40 kids that we can manage really well, and say, this is what we heard, so pull some themes out of there and let's talk about that. And what do you really want your community to look like? What's important to you? And hear from the kids, their perspectives. So I think it's a great opportunity. We have some pretty diverse views from our youth on cannabis. And I think it's a great opportunity to do some education and to get them thinking about, if they choose to use a substance, what's the consequence of that? And do they want to be exposed to cannabis when they're in the park playing, or when they're at an outdoor event or festival? Is that what they want? And for some, it might be they don't care, and for others, they're really opposed to that. And so I think there's a great opportunity to do that piece of engagement. I think we just really need to be thoughtful about it and make sure we have the right people around the tables to support them. So I'm just curious, what do you wish that we spoke about in this session? Was there something missing? We've had some great questions here, but is there anything else that you just really were hoping to hear about today, and we haven't addressed it yet? And we have silence.
People are thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and we maybe...
No.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that all the questions that I had were answered, so...
Great. Thank you, Noah. So I think we'll just kind of recap a little bit while people are having their last thoughts. But we do have another session on Monday. So if you feel like, there was a lot of information and I want to join again, please join us again on Monday. I believe you would have received that invitation. If not, just send us a quick email. And we also have a recording from last Thursday's presentation on that website, While on My Home. And I typed that into the message box as well, just so you could see it. But certainly make sure that you check out those documents on there. Start having those conversations within your community, and at any time reach out to us if you have a quick question, or you just need a little bit of understanding around what this project is looking like.
Yes, and feel free to share that meeting invite if there's others in your community that weren't able to attend, or other potential stakeholders that you're aware of. Please feel free to share that with them, and they'll hopefully be able to attend and learn more about this. Are there any other questions on the text box there,
Nope.
Lorelei?
Nope,
Okay.
I think we've got everything.
Well, that's great. If you have any questions or thoughts afterwards, please feel free to give us a call, send us an email. That we're here to have those discussions and answer your questions that you might have. And we look forward to your community looking at a proposal and considering an opportunity to have a discussion in your local community. We look forward to seeing those proposals. I've got 5 to 4, so